you better be strategic about how you like to form partnerships in your business. Here are things that you can expect from me. So it's like creating a disclaimer up front, almost like, hey, buyer beware, here's what it looks like to work with me. This is like what's working with Zach.
Zach, thank you for joining me for our Thought Leader Spotlight series. I'm your host over here, Matt Kamp, head of partnerships at DealMachine. And on these, we really like to shine an industry spotlight on experts like yourself, educate our audience on how you see the world evolving. So today, really excited to welcome on a good friend, Zach Schaefer over here. Dr. Z is an award-winning consultant, international speaker, leadership coach. You are truly a man of many talents and interests. Like I was even looking at your background. Owner of a highly successful restaurant with multiple locations here in St. Louis, a retired tenured professor, a certified mediator, a Bitcoin educator. You've written 6 books. Your latest one is The Missing Conversations, which is, what we're going to be diving into today. But Zach, excited to have you on, man. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, Matt. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So, tell us more. I know, again, Missing Conversations, that book, when this was, it just got published a couple months ago. I know we were catching up and had said I think this is a book that would be really interesting for our community, our audience. Can you tell us more just about the book, the premise, what inspired you to write it? I'd love to hear more on that background to start off with.
Yeah, absolutely. I hit it on the nose. I put the core thesis of the book right in the title and subtitle, because I think it's important. What I've found as a consultant working with companies of all sizes, solving a variety of different strategic and operational problems, and definitely so as a leadership coach, is there are a lot of conversations that are missing. And oftentimes those are probably the most important ones we should be having. And I also saw that when my mediation background, definitely so. People, when there's in conflict, especially if they bring in an attorney, the first thing the attorney tells you is stop communicating with the other person. And so what I wanted to do is say, actually, communication can be really effective. And so I broke the book into a couple sections where it's like, look, it's not like people are not having these conversations out of malice. Usually it's out of lack of awareness. They're avoiding it because there's some fear there. There's some trepidation, or there's adversity going on in an organizational setting that's taking the focus away from those conversations.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah.
I structured the book in a way that it's 42 very brief chapters, all based on real world experiences, of course, that I anonymized to protect the innocent and the guilty. But while it's not written directly for the real estate industry, I think they can get a ton out of the book. And we actually created a little sheet for folks that are in your industry. I think you have that and you'll be able to share it with them.
Yeah, we'll make sure to link to that so that way you guys can download this and kind of follow along and use those as main takeaways from it too. But it's something it really struck me as when you were even just telling me about the premise of the book. I mean, real estate in the end, it's a people business, right? Yes, it's houses, but really it's the people that own those and the people that call them home, right? And so it's something that we see just the importance of having those conversations, both on the business side, like the professional sense, and even the personal side too. Because a lot of times, there's a lot of people watching this who, they are considering making that jump into real estate or really want to take some next steps there, and are at home, having conversations with family and significant others and wanting to get them on board and see that vision too. And so I thought it was just relevant in so many different ways to our audience. But one thing I'd love to start off with is I love the theme of you really talking about how do you listen with intent and really come into a conversation, in that intentional way. So can you kind of talk about that mindset and how that might apply to the real estate world, and maybe what can our audience take away of coming into conversations with that mindset of listening with intent like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, listening. Let me back up. I also own some real estate, and that's something I do, more for fun on the side, but I think it's an important investment. And what I've found in my, limited experience in being a real estate professional, buying buildings and dealing with folks, is that listening does not seem to be the norm when I'm dealing with many folks. And definitely so when I'm working with clients, leaders. Listening is not a one-way ticket. You have to truly be willing to pump the brakes to hear what someone else has to say. If you can't summarize what that person just said, you are not listening. And so I think agents, people brokering deals, if they pump the brakes to truly go into that and their only agenda is to understand that other person's point of view first, before then switching to, okay, well, here's my perspective, here's how I see it, here's what you'll get from working with me, it would create more relational dividends. It would create relational trust. I view the real estate game, yes, it's about relationships, but at the core of relationships, it's about building trust. Can you believe what I'm telling you? Do you believe that I have your best interests in mind? And those two things absolutely go back to listening. Like there's no other way to establish that. One other point I'd make about listening with intent, and this might be small or tactical, but it's important. You don't listen with your ears first, you listen with your eyes. And man, there are so many dings in our watches and our phone. And obviously, real estate professionals, you're getting dinged all the time because that's your business. You have to be prompt communicators. But when you're in those face to face moments, you better be listening with your eyes first, because that will signal to people, and this guy's not even paying attention to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one thing. Yeah, I was going to even dig into that, like the nonverbals. Do you have any tips there on how to really improve your nonverbal communication? Because that is such a big part of these conversations, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a famous study coming out of communication, applied communication studies. It was in the 90s. It said like 80% of meaning, what somebody gets out of a conversation, comes from nonverbals. Right. So if somebody's telling you something, but their nonverbals are telling you a different story, you're going to believe those nonverbals. So the first piece of advice I would give is you better get strong with eye contact. You better be willing to look people in the eye, especially if you're selling to, let's say, a husband and wife, or maybe a group of friends. I know that's becoming more popular. You better not just stare at one person and act like those other folks in the room don't exist. You better shift to the other people, draw them into that conversation. That is a missing conversation in and of itself. Even though there's probably one key decision maker, you've got to talk to everybody in the room when they're in front of you.
Yeah, love that, man. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something too. Like we both on the agent side working with their client, as well on the investor side too. I mean, that's the mindset we're coming into. It is, hey, DealMachine can be a great tool to help get you in the room, right? Help you identify people looking to sell and reach out to them and actually get you in that living room. But then it's up to you again, like to come in and listen with intent, ask great questions, actually try to problem solve for that person. And like you said, you can't do that unless you can even just summarize what they're telling you, right? Like that's a great kind of initial litmus test. But then coming in and having great nonverbals, being able to actually communicate in that way, make the eye contact, all of that's going to help you really build trust with that individual. And I mean, this is one of the biggest decisions that people, financial decisions they make in their life, right, is what they do with their home. Yeah. So I mean, that is absolutely crucial if you're going to try to win a deal and have someone trust you to follow through with a transaction like that. So
absolutely. I mean, I have two other points I'd make non-verbally. So the first is that eye contact piece to every single person that's in the room. Mm-hmm. Second is energy. If your client or that person across the table, when you're trying to make a deal, has more energy than you, that's not good. Like you want to bring that energy. You've got to be able to govern it. Like I'm a pretty highly energetic person, so I can turn it up or down based on who's in the room and what I think's needed for that conversation or situation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important to not just be operating at a 10 the whole time or at a 2 and, showing no emotional response. That's important because people tend to mirror that emotion. The third thing though, is partially nonverbal, and it's what I would call research. So like strategy lives and resides in the research. So if it's a client, do some research on this person as much as you're able to, even if it's just social media. If it's somebody you're going to negotiate with, you better have some analytical information and details put together. Now, how does that tie to nonverbals? The more prepared you are, allows you to be in that conversation, communicating, and less looking at your papers like this, which then it lowers your confidence level, and it makes you look less competent as well. So yes. That research, that strategic approach to knowing more about the person across from you, client or deal making opponent, so to speak, it's extremely important.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general on our end too, from a DealMachine perspective, if you're looking at the app there, right, like we've got all kinds of data about the property itself. And I mean, we've got, I mean, again, 700 plus data points that you can be able to filter through and look at about
Yep.
the property situation and that individual. Like we've got a demographic, profile built out, for that owner. And so just doing a little bit of due diligence on your way and coming prepared, knowing like, hey, here's what this person might be going through, or here's how we might be able to bring value to them based on, who they are and what the property situation is. Absolutely. Like that is going to skyrocket your close rate, right? The number of properties you show up to and actually, are able
Yep.
to really help that person. So, and just
Absolutely.
guide your questions, right? So,
Yeah. And then the last one that's less nonverbal, more verbal. The best leaders, the best communicators, they're the best question askers.
mhm.
They think about the question, and then when the person's answering it, they listen. They ask more probing questions. They're not waiting for their turn to speak or to shift the decision down a different path. They're truly wanting to understand that person's perspective. Then once it's understood and they can paraphrase that saying, interesting, do you mind if I share a different perspective with you based on what I just learned? Sure, of course you can. Then you transition to where you want them to go.
Yep. Love that. Yeah. I have to find the exact quote. It might be a Tony Robbins quote, but it was one around basically the gist being, hey, your success in life is directly tied to the quality of questions you ask.
Yep.
So I mean, I love that mindset too. So just continuing to train ourselves to ask the question and then, yeah, listen with intent. I think your book does a great job of kind of like summarizing that too. But
Yeah. And to clarify, just so people recall, if you lead a team or a company, this book's for you. It's going to make you a better communicator, a better leader, more able to deal with conflict, to deal with change management, all the things that a lot of people don't want to talk about that go on in an organizational setting. This book will help you. But tied into the real estate relationship building, like you're having to discuss difficult concepts like appraisal issues, pricing problems, delays. Um, it's not good to avoid those things, and the book will help you, give you tips on how to hit those head on with a bit of discretion and a bit of nuance.
yeah, one thing that I think this could really apply to as well. I know you bring up like conflict as a reason that people may not have those missing conversations, something that is natural for humans to want to avoid, right? And so do you have any tips there? I mean, especially like, for example, on the investing side, I know there's conversations you have to have where a seller might come with just, misaligned expectations, and they think that their house is worth this or that, or they've seen this estimate as, some crazy number. And when you actually run the numbers, it's like, oh man, this needs way more work than they think. And you can bring your knowledge to the table to explain that. But do you have tips on like how to have a hard conversation like that with a seller, for example, around something as sensitive as price or anything like that, of almost like delivering bad news in a positive way? Like I'd love for your tips on that.
Yeah, again, this is just more off the cuff, but these are the types of things the book would dig into. You better be strategic about how you like to form partnerships in your business. And if it's me trying to form partnerships with sellers, I'm going to walk them through. Here's how Zach Schaefer likes to do business. And here are things that you can expect from me. And one of the things that you can expect is I'm not going to shy away from the difficult conversations. I'm here to offer that a different perspective and provide that information, even if it's a bit uncomfortable, because that's going to give you the actual data to get the best sale for yourself and make the most money. So it's like creating a disclaimer up front, almost like, hey, buyer beware, here's what it looks like to work with me. This is like what's working with Zach. And then once those things start popping up, you can tie it back to that. Be like, oop, this is one of those conversations. It might be a little uncomfortable, but it's going to be important for us to dig into it. Is that cool? Are you willing to do that? Sure, I'm willing to do that. So having that upfront conversation that this is normal, this is a good thing, this is why you'll be paying me eventually, and then anchoring back to that as needed throughout the relationship.
Yeah, love that. I mean, that's coming into those conversations with sellers. Absolutely, it's something that, especially if you have not done this before, you're a newbie trying to work on that first deal or first couple deals. Like it's something that again can be really natural to avoid, or really have a pit in your stomach when you have to talk through pricing with somebody, and they just don't necessarily have that the right expectation, or they don't they're kind of shooting from the hip. Like coming in, like you said, and offering that disclaimer up front absolutely is going to be able to set better expectations on the rest of the relationship there. So,
Yep.
Yeah. Do you, one thing that I also meant, I kind of briefly mentioned, earlier on in this conversation, on the personal side, do you have any tips of how to have those, those missing conversations with like a spouse or a friend or a business partner on getting them on board with doing something like real estate? I mean, again, I know the book's not about real estate period, but
Right.
I think there's a lot of perspective you can bring there too.
Three things: timing, tone, setting, right? Just because you're excited about having this conversation, that it could be the next chapter of our life, like the next whole phase, it could shift our financial fortunes, my whole identity might shift, and you've got this whole vision built up. The other person ain't there yet. They're not onboarded to that. So you need to think about it from their perspective. Okay, I want to share this big picture, this potential option that we might shift our family in a new direction. What's a good timing for that conversation? Like it makes me think when I was teaching, students would come up as soon as class is over and form a line to talk about all kinds of things. And I'm like, I got shit to do. Like I'm going to the next class or I'm leaving. So think about the timing. Number two, think about tone. Okay. Like what's that tone look like in this? Is it all about you and what you think? Are you involving them at all and what their connection might be to this? Are you planting questions to involve them in creating that feel for the conversation, or is it a monologue? Are you just playing golf and not tennis, hitting it back and forth to them? That's important.
Mm-hmm.
Then the most important thing is, what's the goal? What's the goal of the conversation? Is your goal to persuade them and convince them in one conversation, or is it to plant a seed? Is it to just, let's brainstorm? Hey, here's an option. Let's talk through this and maybe just make it an ongoing discussion. So set a goal, right? What do you actually want out of the initial conversation? And then think about timing, tone, and setting. Like, where are we having this? Over dinner? Are we doing it out in public? Like, it depends on that person and what your relationship is and what your relationship history is, how emotional they get, what they need. So there could be more that goes into it. You can also overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
But those are some things that would go through my head. If I have a big picture idea I want to onboard my wife to or a good friend to, I'm going to put strategy into that. And from their perspective, if I want them to agree with me at some point, I'm going to back that up and reverse engineer that. And it might be 5 conversations. Okay, cool. This is just the first one.
Yep. Yeah. Man. Yeah. That's again, this is a great perspective for people who are, especially, I mean, I know we touched on like the newer, investor agent, these personal conversations. Really appreciate kind of you being a resource there. You also mentioned for like that growing team or larger team too. I know we have a fair number of people on here that, again, they might be using DealMachine as a tool to like, go do more deals and help grow their business and use it as a way to kind of continue to spur their growth. As they go through that, they may be a newer leader though. Do you have any advice for that individual or common mistakes that they might make or red flags to look out for on as you grow a team? How do you intentionally have those missing conversations? Like how can the book apply to those individuals?
I love the question. It's just broad, right? So it depends on what type of missing conversation. As a team scales, going from 5 to 15, that you better be shifting your leadership communication behavior. You better be creating benchmarks for performance and attitude that are codified and that are enforced to build a specific type of culture. Because if not, your culture is going to be whatever we create by accident. And that's not good. You need to be strategic. So your communication shifts from 5 to 15. You're going from 15 to 50. That's a big shift. 50 to 150. That's a big shift. So like you need to alter not just how and who you're communicating with and about what. There better be some structure and some more layers that you're adding in to build a foundation if you want excellence. If you tolerate mediocrity, then these things probably aren't as important. But if you want excellence in performance, accountability, hitting our goals, raising the bar, there needs to be clarity around what's our vision, what's our mission, what's our operational performative sort of key performance indicators. Share that kind of stuff with folks. And then if they're not hitting goals in real estate, it's typically sales goals. What's the performance improvement path? Is it hit it? You don't hit it, you're out. What's coaching look like? How do we get them? How do we skill them up if we think they add value, but they're not hitting goals consistently? You got to think through those things and then communicate it with your team.
Love it, man. Great stuff. And I, really appreciate you coming on here. I one last question I do want to share. I was going through kind of reading your bio, and I've known you for for over a decade now, I think,
Yeah,
on our side,
crazy.
which is amazing. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. I love, and I'm being honest there. And I love seeing again, I kind of read off in your bio, all these different areas that you've achieved and really, somehow managed to balance and I don't know if balance is the right word, but somehow, managed to kind of keep multiple areas of your life going like that. Do you have any advice there on, time management on, I know we've got a lot of people watching this that might have a full-time job and they're trying to get into real estate as a new passion and as a way to change their career. Like, I think a lot of people could potentially benefit from any advice you have there on how to, juggle multiple things like that.
We did not pre-plan this, right? But shameless self-promotion. I put together a 27-page document called
There we
Own
go.
Your Time that literally is a workbook that you can fill out. And the thing
Amazing.
you did the thing that everyone does. How do I manage my time better? You're already behind the 8 ball. That is a tactical approach to time. What app's going to help me? What new calendar? Who do I need to call to
Band-aid.
be my account?
Yeah.
That's the third step. The first 2 steps are who's my accountability partner? That's a person and goals. Goals are your account. So how do you do those effectively? Number 2, energy optimization. People put no thought into how they spend their time and how their energy cycles throughout the day. The third part is really the management piece. And so this 27-page workbook that we sell, it goes through all of that and helps you build a time design mindset to think strategically about it.
Awesome, man. Yeah. I mean, I was hoping you had a resource like that. So
Yeah, it just happened to be sitting there. So
that's awesome. We'll link to that too. So we'll include links for both those things. Zach, this was fantastic, man. Again, I think it's a breath of fresh air for people. If you're just in the weeds on real estate all the time, I love that your mindset's kind of a higher level beyond even just that. So, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, like connect with you? Again, we'll link to the book and that other resource as well. But yeah.
yeah, so if you need to get a hold of me, just email me, man. Zach, ZACH at sparkthediscussion.com. My brain lives in my inbox. I have like 9 emails pointing to that. So that's
Cool.
where if you email me, I'll get back to you right away.
Make it easy. Awesome. Zach, appreciate you coming on, man. This was great.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. Great. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And to everyone watching, Matt Kamp over here with DealMachine, and happy deal finding.